So welcome to another big Jimny video, and this is the first sort of technical one actually aimed at JC74 owners. So this is the Jimny Nomad, the 5-door. If you're buying a 5-door Jimny, this is one that you would have probably imported or got imported from Japan, and it would have been sourced originally from India. It's the 5-door one, and if you've been doing some research on it, you may have noticed some discussions about the Kingpin bearings. Soon after its introduction, there was an issue with the Kingpin bearings on that car. Okay, and eventually Suzuki, or Maruti Suzuki, issued a bulletin MQCM113. So that's bulletin MQCM113, which highlighted an issue with the Kingpins themselves. And it turns out that this was fundamentally because they'd changed the design of the Kingpins from what was the design that was across all of the Jimnys from about 50 years ago. They'd updated the design and it had got the preload on it wrong. So during the design, the preload wasn't quite right, and very quickly wobble was building up in the system from new, and also this wobble then damaged the braking system. It made warp the discs and that. So you may have heard about there being a bulletin on the Nomads. Well, first of all, can I put your mind at rest, if you've got one of these, is that was cured in production in October 2024. So it only affected the very early ones, and almost certainly never affected any that were then imported into the Japanese and Australian markets officially, because they didn't start till a bit later than that. Although I think there might have been some early ones in Australia that possibly suffered from it, because I did see some people having their Kingpins done, refitted under this bulletin. So if you're watching from the UK, this almost certainly doesn't affect you. But what it does affect is in the future when you come to buy parts. This is because most parts people will probably go back to the Jimnys have been the same since year dot. And it's the same setup. Well, it is and it isn't. I have here the Kingpin and the bearing set from a standard Jimny, what we'd call the entire range for the last 50 years. Okay, so this is the standard one that most people sell. What Suzuki did, and I've only got the new bearing here, what they did was they increased the diameter of the Kingpin. So the Kingpin is much fatter. Now, I'm not quite sure why they did this. I'm not into the fine elements of engineering. My engineering experience is electronic engineering, not mechanical engineering. Mainly because with these old ones, I had never seen any particular damage to the smaller pin that they've got. I have seen one where the pin was sheared off, but that's like one in all the years we've been working on the cars. But they saw fit to increase the diameter. So I haven't got a Kingpin from a JC74 here at the moment, but I've got the bearing and the diameter is bigger. Equally, the actual rollers themselves, there's 12 rollers on the standard one and there are 17 on the new one. So it's got a much wider central bore and it's got a higher density of bearings. Now, whether that makes it any stronger, because basically it's the same sort of size. So the old one is 15 by 42 by 13 and the new one is 20 by 42 by 15. So they're both 42mm outer diameters. The height has changed from 13mm to 15mm, and the central bore has changed from 15cm to 20cm. So be aware that those have changed, that the Kingpins have changed, and therefore if you are ending up buying a Kingpin bearing set, which if you've off-roaded it, you will have to buy them reasonably regularly. If you are buying a bearing set, then they are different on the 5-door. So don't be fooled by the fact that all the previous models through all the years have used the same ones. Whether you could retrofit the new ones to the old style, I wouldn't know. I mean, obviously the 15mm height difference will mean that the bearing won't sit in the axle hub to the right depth and things like this. But you know, if you wanted to get really keen, whether you could, and whether these actually had any advantage over the other bearings that they originally had, I don't know, because of course these bearings don't actually do a lot of what I'd call bearing work, which is where they actually spin at high speed, because they're in the steering mechanism. So in that they only do a slow rotation through about probably 120 degrees of their radius, you know, the diameter. So, and they do it slowly because they just when you turn the steering wheel. So whether it makes any difference in reality, I wouldn't know. And whether these are stronger, I don't know. I'm not an engineer. In fact, if you've got any comments, feel free to make them down in the comments below. If you think that by going to these slightly different bearings with a bigger ball does make them any stronger, then I'd love to know. I hope you found this informative. If you did, then please like and subscribe. And until next time, drive carefully, and I'll catch you further down the road.